Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi 1 week at a time. This is Masechet Menachot, and today is our 8th class, and we are going to be reviewing Daf 52 to 58. And we're in the middle of discussing what happens if the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, if he dies and he brought in the morning his, right, or half of his mincha, his sacrifice, his grain offering, and then he dies, what happens if they don't appoint a new Kohen Gadol? They still need to bring a minchat chavitin, again, the grain offering. And there was a machloket in the Mishnah that we ended off last week. Who pays for this sacrifice? Usually it was paid by the Kohen Gadol, but right now there's no Kohen Gadol. So the issue is, does the community or communal funds pay for the sacrifice, or do the heirs of the Kohen Gadol pay for the sacrifice? So the Gemara tells us on Daf 52 that they have to bring, let's take a step back. When there is a Kohen Gadol, so then he brings, we said, the whole isaron, which is a measurement, and then they split it half in the morning, half in the afternoon. So he brought it in the morning, then he died, and now the question is, what do we do? So we had learned last week that if there is a new Kohen Gadol, he brings a new isaron, we split it, and half becomes the sacrifice, and half gets burnt or disposed of. Here, we don't have a new Kohen Gadol, so we bring a new whole isaron, if that whole isaron is brought in the afternoon, and then in the next day in the morning, and then in the afternoon. Or another opinion is that you bring it in the morning, and then half in the morning and half in the afternoon. As we said, right, you bring this chavitin, this grain offering in the morning and in the afternoon. Another opinion is no, you only, if there's no Kohen Gadol, you only bring it in the morning. So the Gemara says no, it's called, it says chavitin tamid, right? Always. But the tamid, meaning it is connected to the korban tamid, right? The daily sacrifice that's brought once in the morning and once in the afternoon. And therefore the Gemara concludes that you need to bring the whole isaron in the morning and then another whole isaron in the afternoon. Then we bring the flour. You need to add livona. Again, livona, which is the frankincense. And now there's a question, how much livona? Because remember, originally you brought a whole isaron and it was split into two. So therefore, the Gemara says that you have to bring 2 handfuls of livona, one for the morning and one for the afternoon, because each sacrifice needs a full chametz, right? A full handful. Or another opinion is no, you only have to bring 1 handful, half for the morning and half in the afternoon, just like you split the flour, you also split the livona. Then there's a question about the oil, right? Do you double the oil or not? And then the Gemara answers that we bring, as we said, this is in the case where there's no Kohen Gadol, you bring a full isaron in the morning and a full one in the afternoon, and you bring 1 handful of livona in the morning and 1 in the afternoon, and 1.5 log of oil, again, which is a volume of oil in the morning, and again, another 1.5 in the afternoon. With that, we finish the 4th chapter of Masechet Menachot, and now we're going to begin the 5th chapter. the Mishnah tells us that all the menachot, all the grain offerings are matzah, meaning they are not leavened, except for the 10 loaves of the Todah, of the Thanksgiving sacrifice. A quarter of them are chametz, and um, and so they are chametz and the shtei halechem. Right? Remember, we discussed the shtei halechem, which are the 2 loaves that are brought on Shavuot. Okay, now what do? You use the flour of the menachot to make basically what's called seor. This is perfect before, as we get ready for Pesach. They would take the flour from that mincha and basically make it into a sourdough starter, and then add it back into the mincha, or you bring a starter from somewhere else and you add it to the mincha, and then you fill up the flour. So again, the issue is we need to make sure that we have a certain volume or measurement of flour, and then the question is, how do you count the leavening agent to in the volume, right? How do you calculate the volume? So now the Gemara explains that the verse teaches that all the menachot are matzah. Daf 53, right? It says it's eaten as matzot. It can't be chametz. These are all verses that teach that there can't be any chametz when dealing with the menachot. Now, we mentioned seor. Seor is the word for a leavening agent in the Torah, and we understand it to mean what we said before, like sourdough starter, not yeast, right? But something that it's flour and water, and it is 100% leavening, a leavening agent. Another opinion is maybe it's not 100%; it's like partially. Okay, then we have the concept of chalut. We actually learned this in Masachet Pesachim when discussing things that can become chametz. Chalut means when you scald the flour with boiling water, and this prevents the flour from rising. Okay, we said that it has to be matzah. You have to be very careful that it does not rise. The verse says that, here the Gemara gives like a story that the Jews said to God, right, that you should be very happy with us because we made you known in the world. And God said, no, actually, it wasn't you guys. It was the avot. It was the forefathers that made me known in the world. This is based on verses that the Gemara brings up. Another verse teaches that Hashem came and punished the Egyptians with water. And then the Gemara then brings all of these verses that, or I should say, teachings that use the same word, meaning, right? So let's say, the first thing I just mentioned was the word adir, which is like great, like adir hu, like we say on Seder night. The next teaching is the word yedid, right? Yedid means friend, but the Gemara says, right, that the Yedid built the Beit HaMikdash for God, and God is, right, basically it says like the Yedid built the Yedid for the Yedid in the area of the Yedid. So again, using that word friend, but it means different things. So it basically means that Shlomo built the Beit HaMikdash, the temple for God, and he did it in Exactly. So, right, Zohar says, right, Shlomo was called Yedidia. So that's the idea that Yedid means different things depending on the context of the verse. The same thing with Binyamin is also called Yedid, and we know the Beit HaMikdash was in the tribe of Binyamin, of Benjamin. Another like play on words is Tov, right? Moshe is Tov. He received Tov, the Torah, from Tov, which is God, for Tov, which is Bnei Israel. So I think like on one hand, it's a play on words. On the other hand, it's like a beautiful idea that, right, the same word can mean God, Moshe, the Jewish people, and the Torah. The same thing as like Zeh, like Moshe is called Zeh. He gets Zot, which is the Torah, from Zeh, who is God, for Zu, which is right the Jewish people. So again, like these play on words that are giving us a message. And since we're talking about the temple and the forefathers, so it says that when the temple was destroyed, God found Abraham in the temple and he was praying for the Jewish people. And he's, Abraham says, well, maybe not everybody sinned. Maybe they could have done tshuva. Maybe there was, maybe there's no tshuva, but I can't fix it. And Abraham starts crying. So God called the Jewish people a zait ra'anan, a beautiful olive tree, because in the end, they're going to be okay. And we'll get back to the olive tree in a minute. But then the Gemara mentions the spies, the meraglim, who spoke harsh words, and therefore the Jewish people were punished. Right there, then the Gemara talks about all the exiles, and they're going to be shortened because God prayed for the Jewish people. Okay, we said that the Jewish people are compared to an olive tree, because the leaves don't fall off of the tree. This would have been good for Tu B'Shvat, right? The leaves don't fall off of the tree, therefore the Jewish people will live forever. Or the other side, maybe in a different way, that the Jewish people don't do tshuva unless they suffer, right? The image of the olive only releases its oil when it's pressed, right? When there's challenge and when it's hard. Okay, let's go back to our starter that we mentioned. If anybody makes sourdough, you'll like this, right? So the discussion is, what is this starter, right? If it's too dense, then it's going to be too much flour, and then you're going to have more than the isaron that you need for the mincha. If it's too soft or too liquidy, it'll be too little flour. So the Gemara says, actually, you don't take flour from the original isaron and make it into starter, because we're afraid that right, maybe you'll take it from somewhere else, and therefore that's not what we're going to do. Daf 54 says that you cannot use apples to leaven the mincha. I didn't know that that's something that you could do. Or another opinion is actually it is okay. And the Gemara says, well, if you use an apple that's truma, remember truma can only be eaten by the Kohanim. And if you take a truma apple and you add it to dough and it rises, so the whole dough becomes truma and becomes forbidden to anybody who's not a Kohen. So that shows that it does leaven it, even though it's not the best leavening agent, it still does something, and therefore we see that it is effective. Okay, back to the different menachot. The hardest mincha to take kmitza from. Again, the handful is the minchat choteh, the sinner's grain offering, because we'll learn in a little bit, this mincha is only flour. So if it's only flour, it's very hard. How do you take a handful of flour without it like falling out? Therefore, the Gemara says maybe you can mix it with some water, and then it wouldn't be so hard to do. And then the question is, do we go by the original amount of flour, or we take a handful based on the volume that it is now? So that's actually a machloket. And there's a machloket if you can actually add water to this offering or not. Okay, now the Gemara talks about impurity of food. If food becomes impure, it needs to be at least the size of an egg. Now, what happens if it changes sizes, right? Again, since we're talking about the volume of the flour of the mincha before or after, right? So the Gemara is trying to understand which volume is important, the original amount that you had or the amount that you have right now. So we go to this concept of impurity with food. Now we said it has to be an egg volume. Now, what if it changes size? So one opinion is you evaluate it at its current size. So if it shrinks, it's not tameh anymore, it's not impure. And if it grows, then it is. Or you view it as it was, right? So that is the machloket. Or really, we're only talking about maybe rabbinic impurity, tuma dirabanan, or no, even if it is biblical, even if it is dirabanan. Another case is meat of an old animal that was impure, and then it shrunk, and now it doesn't convey impurity anymore. So again, the Gemara is trying to bring proof one way or another. So this seems to show that we look at what the size is now. If now it's smaller, so then it would not convey the impurity. Or no, there's another case that what happens if it was the appropriate size and was impure, but then it shrunk and then it grew back, right? It rehydrated. So now the question is, if you remember the concept of dihui, right? Dihui means that it was pushed away, meaning this thing was originally impure. Then it shrunk and it becomes pure, so, or not impure, right? So I guess it becomes pure. So now we got rid of the impurity. So now when it grows back to the original size, maybe we could say, well, yes, it's the original size, but because we already got rid of the impurity, that's it. It doesn't go back or not. And that's the question of, is it impure now? Okay, let's go back to other things that have different sizes. The Gemara talks about separating maaser, the tithe, by number, right? Meaning how the individual number of figs. So you're separating for dry figs with fresh figs. Now, dry figs, right, are much smaller than fresh figs. And the Gemara says that you don't do it by volume because that would not be accurate, meaning you should do number of figs, right? So maaser means you have to take out a tenth. So take out a tenth, meaning 1 out of 10 figs, not put it into a box and take out a tenth of that box, right? So the Gemara says that you don't do it by volume. So therefore it shows that we go according to what it used to be, right? A fig for a fig, even though this one is dry and this one is moist, or is fresh. Okay, what about dry for fresh? So the Gemara says we actually do go by volume. And then the Gemara says, no, we're actually not speaking about maaser. Again, maaser is very specific, 1 out of 10. However, what if we're talking about truma? Truma is not as specific. Truma, you can separate either 1/40th, 1/50th, or 1/60th, meaning it leaves it up to the owner's discretion how generous they want to be. And therefore, if that's the case, then it's a different situation in terms of do we use volume or number. Another opinion is that we're talking about trumat maaser. This is when the Levi has to separate a tenth from what he received, but he could do it generously, and therefore it does not have to be an exact amount. So Daf 55 tells us that they can take dry figs for fresh ones or vice versa, right? And again, we go by number and we don't go by volume. And then the Gemara says, wait a minute, the truth is this is different because dry figs, if you cook them, right, or boil them in water, then you could restore the original volume, even though probably not exactly, but okay. And therefore, it is okay to do dry figs for wet figs, or fresh figs, but not necessarily for other things. Okay, so the Gemara says actually that you can use fresh figs for trumat maaser, for dry figs, only in a place that they dry out figs. Meaning, again, what's the idea? That a dry fig is going to last much longer than a fresh fig. But if you live in a place where they don't do that, then you cannot do it. It's seen as not appropriate to give to the Kohen in that state. But the truth is, it is still better to give fresh figs to the Kohanim. And here the Gemara talks about the competing values of what's called yafeh, right? What's nice versus mitkayem, something that can last, right? We know that fresh fruit is amazing, but it does not last. So the question is, what's better, the nicer fruit or the long-lasting fruit? And that is the machloket. Okay, the next Mishnah tells us that the Menachot are kneaded KN, right? Kneaded with warm water, and you have to make sure and be very careful that it does not become chametz. You also have to make sure that the leftover mincha, what's called the shiraim, after you take the kometz and you burn that, what's left, you have to make sure that that also does not become chametz. And if it does become chametz during either the kneading or the shaping or the baking, you would be liable. And the Gemara is going to say that each one of these things is a separate prohibition. So you would be in trouble for all three of those things. Okay, so now the Gemara explains. It says, Lo ta'afeh chametz chelkam, right? Do not bake the mincha as chametz, meaning all of it can't be chametz, even the leftover part, even the shiraim. Now, it also says, Lo ta'aseh chametz, don't make it chametz. One was bake it, one was make it. And therefore, you're liable for each act of the mincha that became chametz. So again, we said kneading, shaping, baking. Each one is separate. Okay, and then the Gemara asks, well, how do we understand the verse? Is it more inclusive? Is it more exclusive? The Gemara says no. It is not. Again, it uses the principles of chlal and prat, right? A generalization and then a specification, and then maybe only the baking is what you would be liable for, but not the other actions. And the Gemara says, no, we actually say that it's coming to include more things, meaning the other two actions of kneading and shaking and shaping. The Gemara then says, that right, maybe the way the verse is structured, that the generalization was not really near the specification, and the Gemara says actually, and maybe you can't use that as a formula. The Gemara says no, actually we have a case where even though they are not in the same verse, you still use that formula, and that is with the goat of the nasi, of the ruler, that you need to sacrifice or slaughter this goat in the north of the courtyard, just like the burnt offering, just like the olah. And the seir nasi, this goat, was singled out from all the other sacrifices, because maybe because it's coming to teach that if you didn't slaughter it in the north, it would be invalid. So another opinion is maybe it's coming to teach that only this goat needs to be in the north, but a regular sin offering does not need to be in the north. And there you might have thought that, and therefore there's another verse that teaches that a regular chatat, a regular sin offering, does need to be in the north. And then the Gemara says that maybe you're going to learn this idea from klal and then a prat, a generalization, and then a specification. And the Gemara says, no, it's actually the other way. It's a prat, specification, and then a generalization. And that generalization adds more to the specification, and therefore it includes all sin offerings and the goat of the nasi. Okay. Okay, another opinion is actually that it excludes, the Gemara says, so it includes this, but it excludes the goat of the Nisi'im, of the heads of the tribes that they brought in the desert. These do not need to be slaughtered in the north, even though you do smicha, you lean on the animal like the other sacrifices, or maybe it does not need smicha, and therefore there was a special verse that taught that this sacrifice does need smicha. Okay, Daf 56. So again, we're talking about what this verse excludes. Remember, we said the goat of the nasi needs to be done in the north, but it excludes something. So one opinion is that it excludes the goat of the nisi'im. Another, on Daf 56, another opinion is that it teaches that the person who's doing the slaughtering, the shochet, does not have to be in the north, but the person who is collecting the blood does need to be in the north. Another opinion is that it's speaking about the bird sacrifices, that they do not have to be done in the north, even though their animal counterpart does. Another opinion is that it's excluding the Pesach, that it doesn't need to be done in the north. And then the Gemara says, no, actually, it's coming to what we said before, that it's coming to teach that the person who is doing the shechita does not have to be in the north, but the person who catches the blood does need to be in the north. One second. Okay. Okay. Now, now the Gemara talks about if you baked the shiraim, the leftovers of the mincha, and it became chametz, you're liable for 2 sets of lashes, because the assumption is that when you baked it, you also shaped it, so it's shaping and baking. But maybe baking is its own thing. So the Gemara says you're right. It depends who's doing the action. If it was just done by one person, meaning one person shaped it and baked it, so then that person would be liable for 2 sets of lashes. If it was 2 separate people, each one is liable for the action that they do. Okay. Now, the Gemara discusses the Bechor. The Bechor is the firstborn animal of in your flock. So the firstborn of every animal should go to the Kohen, to the priest. But if it has a blemish, so then it does not become a sacrifice, and the Kohen or the person excuse me, then he can eat this animal. So it says that if the Bechor has a blemish, and it has like this pressure building up of blood, you can only let the blood, take out the blood where the animal is not going to get a blemish. Or you can but you can take out the blood even if it causes a blemish, but you can't eat the animal because of that blemish that you just caused. Or another opinion is you actually can. Okay, if two people worked with the mincha and it became chametz, both those people are liable. Now, again, the question is who's doing what? So the Gemara goes back to the Bechor, right? If the Bechor has a blemish, a mum, you can't add another blemish because you're not supposed to blemish this animal. Or maybe you can, because once it is already damaged, so it is already damaged. Or no, you can't cause the blemish to happen, even if it's indirect. And that leads us to the next discussion of, can you if you put this leavening agent on the dough of the mincha, but you didn't knead it, you didn't touch it, you put it on, and then it becomes chametz on its own, you would be liable. So the Gemara says that even though you didn't do any other action, even though it's passively becoming chametz, you would still be liable. And they compare it to the laws of Shabbat, that if you put meat on a grill or on a stove and it cooks by itself, you would be liable. The Gemara on Daf 57 says, wait a minute, you're not liable for that for Shabbat, only if you actually flip it over and cause it to cook. So too maybe with the seor, with the leavening agent, if you only put it on top of the dough, meaning if you only put it on top of the dough and it will cause the dough to rise, you would be liable. So the Gemara talks about this meat. If you put the meat on the fire, even if you don't turn it over, it's still gonna cook. So why would you not be liable for it? So the Gemara says, no, the case is that if you don't turn it over, then it's gonna cook only a little bit, right? What we call ma'achal ben drusai. Do you remember in Masechet Shabbat, it was a long time ago, we learned this concept of this robber named Ben Drusai, and he used to eat his food like very raw. So that's called ma'achal ben drusai. That is the minimum amount that we count as cooking. So the Gemara says that if you don't turn it over, so it's going to cook like ma'achal ben drusai, and if you flip it over, then it's gonna cook like on both sides, kemachal ben drusai. Therefore, it's saying that if it's only one side like that, that would not be considered cooking, and therefore you would not be liable. Okay, wait, does meat discussion relate to the long cooking? Yes, it does. I mean, okay, Lynn is asking about machal ben drusai when we talk about food like your cholent before Shabbat. Yes, meaning your food either needs to be completely raw before Shabbat. I'm not paskening halacha, but basically it's either totally raw, so there's no reason you would touch it because it's totally raw, or it needs to be at least a third done, meaning because that's called cooked and it's already cooked, and therefore what happens over Shabbat is just extra bonus cooking. So yes, it is machal ben drusai is the shear is the amount that we would say is called cooking. Okay. All right, so now the verse teaches that we said the chametz that you take off cannot be chametz, but not only that, but also the entire mincha cannot be chametz, right? It says kol hamincha, which includes all the menachot, all except for the ones we mentioned, all the menachot are not allowed to be chametz. If you if you caused a valid mincha to rise to become chametz, you would be liable. But if you caused an invalid mincha to become chametz, you would be exempt, meaning once it's already invalidated, that's it, and it wouldn't matter what you did afterwards. The Gemara continues that if, let's say, you had the mincha and it became chametz, and then you took it outside of the courtyard, which you're not allowed to do, and then you bring it back in and it rises more or it becomes more chametz, so would you be liable? Because once it's chametz and then you took it out, it's totally invalid already, so making it rise more shouldn't do anything. So the Gemara says teku, right? We're not sure. And what happens if the mincha becomes chametz when it's already on the altar, right? Again, everything we've discussed till now is before you get to the altar, to the mizbeach. What if it only becomes chametz at the top of the mizbeach? So like it already got to the mizbeach, maybe it's okay or not. Again, the Gemara says teku. Okay, the verse also includes the menachot that are brought as libations, as nesachim that are added to an animal sacrifice, or maybe it also includes the lechem hapanim. So now the nesachim only are flour and oil. The Gemara says actually no, you actually could add water to this as well. The Gemara now explains that the dry measuring utensils in the Beit HaMikdash, so the one opinion is that they do not sanctify what is put inside of them. It only becomes sanctified once the bread or the mincha is baked. But when you just measure out the flour, it does not become sanctified. So it says that Moshe sanctified all of the utensils in the in the Mishkan, but only maybe that was only the wet measures, but not the dry ones. And the Gemara discusses, or maybe the distinction was the inside and the outside surfaces of the wet measures could sanctify the material that's put in it, but the dry measures only sanctified from the inside. So again, it's two different opinions. Maybe they only sanctified on the inside, or they didn't sanctify at all. Okay, the Gemara then explains again that the lechem panim is only sanctified after it is baked, not beforehand. The Gemara says, but wait a minute, when you knead it in the vessel, doesn't it become sanctified? So the Gemara says, no, you knead it on a surface that does not sanctify the mincha. Okay, we said you cannot put any leavening or honey on the mizbeach, right? It cannot be burnt on the mizbeach. And then the Gemara talks about other things that are forbidden, that you're not allowed to put on the mizbeach. What happens if you put them on the ramp of the mizbeach? One opinion is you would be liable. Another opinion is you would be exempt, right? Again, is the ramp like the altar or not? Daf 58 tells us that an individual cannot donate a shtei halechem. Remember shtei halechem, the sacrifice brought on Shavuot, which is chametz. It is only a communal sacrifice. It is not an individual's sacrifice. So too, the community cannot donate a lechem apanim, a shtei halechem, even though there is an obligation once a year to bring it. You cannot just decide that that's something you want to bring. The Gemara says, however, right, these are two exceptions, right? The shtei halechem is chametz, and it is brought to the Beit HaMikdash. Now, it is not burnt on the altar. It is like waved in front of the altar, but it is a mincha that is chametz. And another exception are bikurim, right? Bikurim, the first fruit, right? Fruit turns into honey, right? Like date honey. So bikurim are honey, and they are an obligation. But again, as I said, they're not burnt on the altar, and they cannot be volunteered on like another time, right? As a person can say, like, oh, I grew a beautiful pomegranate, I want to bring it to the Beit HaMikdash. So that's not something that we do. Okay. Okay, we said that it is forbidden to burn all of the. Okay, 1 second. We said that you cannot put anything that is chametz on the mizbeach. You can't burn it. You can't burn all of it. You can't burn some of it. Even a small amount cannot be burnt on the mizbeach. There's a machloket if the chametz, again, the handful, can be less than 2 olives amount, less than 2 zaitim, and if you can burn less than a zait, right? Maybe you would say it has to be a certain amount that is going to be burnt. If you do burn leavening agents or honey on the mizbeach, you would be liable for each one of those things, and for the 2 mixtures, like let's say you mixed this leavening agent and honey, so you'd be liable for 4, meaning 1 for each one of the things by themselves, plus the 2 mixtures. Another opinion is no, we don't give lashes for a generalized isur, a generalized prohibition, or you get 1 set of lashes, or maybe you don't get any lashes because it needs to be two separate things, and this is not that. Okay, with that, we finish this week's review. Be'ezrat Hashem, we will pick it up next week on Tuesday at our regular time. For those of you who are interested, I'm actually giving a class, I think it is next Tuesday. Wait, I'm just going to confirm. Yes, next Tuesday at 8, I'm giving a class on a very special Haggadah. So if you guys are interested, you can join me at 8 o'clock. And then at 9 o'clock, we will have our regular class. Again, Israel is not changing their clocks for another few weeks. So just, I don't know, keep the calculations in mind that it is not the regular time difference. But that's when we change. March 27th is when we change the clocks. Okay, so we changed the clocks on March 27th. Thank you. So till then, please keep in mind the time differences. Okay, we have a few minutes. So if anybody has, I see there were some like shorter dapim. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them and see how everybody is doing.
I just wanted to, if I may, dedicate this shir to the refuah of my brother, Rafal Chaim ben Sarah.
Okay, refuah shlema.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to know who brings the korban tamid? Is it who actually purchases the korban tamid?
Okay, excellent. So the korban tamid and all communal sacrifices are bought from temple funds, specifically the machatzita shekel. If you remember, a long time ago, we learned Masechet Shkalim, and there we talked about how, and we actually just read about it in last week's Parsha. Every person gives half a shekel, and that's basically the money that becomes the communal temple funds, and all communal sacrifices will be used, will be bought from that money. So the community pays for it, and the kohanim, the priests that are on duty that day, will bring that sacrifice. So we will learn Masechet Tamid. Masechet Tamid talks about the korban tamid and how it is brought every day. So the kohanim that are on duty on that, for that week are responsible for doing the tamid service, but the sacrifice is bought from communal funds.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. What else?
As a teacher, I would say that's a complete answer. He said the whole thing. He didn't just give
Thank you. I try.
Yes. To go back to the meat, since you actually went ahead and elucidated some more, and you mentioned that if it was completely uncooked, that would be okay.
Yes.
And so I was like, see, I don't get a chance. I don't have the equipment. I don't get a chance to actually make cholent or whatever. Okay. So I always knew about that. We read about that. Get it a third way, cooked through. So tell me more about the completely raw. And that is if you mean you plug it in at the last second before candles?
Or half an hour before, meaning the idea is that like I actually make cholent right before Shabbat, and the meat is frozen. I take it out of the freezer. So the idea is that we want to make sure that the person doesn't have any desire to stir what's in the pot. So there are two ways to go about that. Either it's already cooked. Once it's cooked, why would you touch it? Because it's already done. Or it's so raw that me stirring it is not going to do anything, meaning it's going to be frozen for another few hours. So by the time, I'm going to go to sleep and it's going to cook overnight and it'll be cooked by Shabbat day. But my point is that because it's completely raw, there's nothing I could do. So that is the mindset behind it.
Wow, that's really interesting. Thank you. So it's
Again, that's only for like like again the crock pot. It's not like
right.
you can again like put on your plata something that's raw. Again, that is a little bit more complicated. But because you're putting it in the crock pot, you're not touching it. It's not fire. It's not right. Meaning it's a little bit different. So it has different laws.
Very cool.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, wishing everyone a Shavua Tov, Besorot Tovot to all of us in Israel. Baruch Hashem, it was quiet for this whole time, so that was very exciting. I was
We had
going
a
to make an
siren
announcement.
about an hour ago. I think there was in Tel Aviv on my phone. I saw
So we had
there
one,
was a
we had, yes,
siren was about an
yeah,
hour ago. Yeah.
yeah, we had a warning. So Zohar and I had a warning, but we did not
But
have
there
a
was no
siren.
siren.
Yeah, so just keeps
Just
things interesting.
just as an aside, on Tuesday I have another shiur right before this one, so
Okay.
I won't be able to join next week. But will that be recorded?
Yes, everything is recorded.
And it's on
I
the
actually
Webby
have a
Shiva?
surprise. It was so cool. I'll tell you now since we're already here. But the author of the Haggadah that I'm reviewing texted me today. I don't know him, but he texted me today. He said, I saw you're giving a shiur about my Haggadah. Let me tell you all about it. And he sent me all these things. It was amazing. I was like, this
Wonderful.
is so cool.
That is
Um,
wonderful. Yeah.
it was amazing. It was amazing. So I'm very
So will you
excited.
be sending us an email about that so that we can?
I think Web Yeshiva is going to send you an email. Maybe you have to register.
Yeah, I think you have to sign up for it. I
I
think
think you have
I
to
did
sign
that.
up for
Yeah.
it. It's
And where
called
would I
like
find it to sign up?
on Web Yeshiva. Um,
Okay.
and I think it's called like Haggadah. Hold on one second. Let me see if I think they sent me a link. So let me see if I can find that. One second. Here, Haggadah trailer series. No, but that's a link to the Facebook. Hold on a minute. Let me see if he sent me Haggadah trailers. Maybe this is a, hold on. Maybe this is a link. One second and I'll send it. Yes. Okay, hold on. Copy. 1 second. Okay, here. Okay, I think this is a link. See if that works. And see if it goes to, does it go to the page?
I don't want to.
Oh,
Goes to all kinds of
yeah,
courses.
yeah. It goes to the page and you can, it shows you all the different people
Ah,
and
is,
all the
is the one that's
different,
called a different night Haggadah?
mine is a different night. Yeah.
I'll take a photograph of the link and I can then do it
Okay.
after. Okay.
Yeah, there's like wow, there's like so many of them. It looks like there's like 15 different classes of like different Haggadot, and different teachers are presenting on on different nights, different
Okay.
Haggadot. So
I
it
think I
looks,
found it on the look at all courses. I think I went and did that just yesterday, and I just happened to
okay.
see that. It had already posted, so you'll find it there too with everything
Yeah.
else. You just
It's
scroll
on
Thank
the
you.
through and you see
regular,
it.
it's on, yeah, I imagine it's on the regular website, and I think you have to like register for each one of those lectures, like
Okay.
whatever you want, but
Right,
it's all
right.
free.
Thank
It's
you.
all going to be recorded, and I actually
It's
just looked
extraordinary.
online if you're interested. I was looking for like previous classes, so they also have like the previous the things we've done in the past few years, either on the Web Yeshiva website, or I went to on YouTube and I saw those also. So there's a lot of stuff out there. Baruch Hashem.
Web Yeshiva is so great. You guys spoil us so much. It's
Baruch
great. It's
Hashem.
really
Baruch
great. I always
Hashem.
talk it
It's
up.
Yeah.
I always encourage people, I always, people are like, they've never heard of it. I was like, just go check it out. It's been out there
yeah,
for 20 years.
it's
I know
amazing.
that
It's like,
Ilanit and I saw your name on this course, the Golden Age of Tzfat. You were doing that.
Signed
Ilanit.
up for
Ilanit?
it?
the Golden Age of Tzfat? You did that course? Because I saw your name on it.
I did not do that course, but one day, may I merit. I did listen to that by Rabbi Sedley. I go and listen to it, yes, but I don't do it. I accept to listen. I don't teach it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
a few lifetimes away from being able to do that.
You never know. You never know. All right. Wishing everyone
Thank
a
you very
Shavua
much.
Tov and Besorot Tovot.
Safe
Thank
week.
Safe.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so
Bye
much.
bye.
Bye.